Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Thriving Minds podcast with your host, Walter Parada, where we strive to provide you with empowering talks so you can live to thrive. I hope you find yourself in the right frame of mind, focusing on all the things within your control. All right, so today's episode, we're going to be talking about the more you know about yourself, the better you'll be. So this can be a bit of a sensitive subject, as there are many triggers that sets us off to be more defensive. Primarily, it's those things that point out our weaknesses or those areas that we tend to struggle with. These are our vulnerabilities that we try to keep to ourselves, and when they're highlighted or make us aware of them, that's where the self-preservation mode kicks in. It's trying to dispel it or move on from it quickly. But there's also the other side of it, where you can draw strength from because it brings that satisfaction that you're skilled or you do something well. Bringing that attention to the things that you excel at naturally makes you more confident and opens you up a little bit more. But the moment that there's opposition, criticism, or any hint of what you do is received poorly, it leads to being very gun shy, from not wanting to pursue the things that you really want to do. While it's important to build and preserve your confidence, it's crucial that you know more about yourself because it gives a snapshot of your strengths and weaknesses, your likes and dislikes, your motivation, your inspiration, the things that bring you highs and lows, and just the overall understanding of what makes you tick or what makes you unique, your personality. The process of uncovering and discovering things about yourself can be very uncomfortable and sometimes even painful at times, but it provides a truly fulfilling experience that helps to focus on your inner scorecard, the things that you really value and not so much what everybody else values. This might be a big reason why this topic can be very sensitive for many people. I know for me, that's kind of what held me back. I can remember as a kid, and probably for many of us when we were kids, generally things are just great, especially if you just have a pretty stable household. So when I was a kid, I was full of energy and optimism that helped me be more open and outgoing. And then as I got older, particularly from 5th to 6th grade, I noticed there was a big change in me where the environment that I was in, that age entering middle school years, those preteen years, can be a very trying time. This was probably my more uncomfortable stage of my life, more so than being a young adult. So at this stage, I was probably, like many of us now, being more exposed to criticism by our peers. The difference from the elementary school level to middle school, or what some people consider junior high, is that in elementary school, we're more likely to be friends with the people that we're around with. But then in middle school, it's more of a weaning off as much as you can. We're basically sizing up each other, kind of seeing each other like a threat. It's natural for this kind of transition to take place because we're developing from kids into teenagers. We're hitting puberty. This tends to be a bit of a defining moment in how we conduct ourselves going forward. At this stage, we're less likely to hear the good things that we do and more about the bad things from our peers. The way we look, the way we talk, the way we behave. These things contribute to the sensitivity of not wanting to know more about ourselves. These are just the natural trials that we go through that are part of the growth opportunities. When you can take this type of perspective, it makes understanding yourself so much more receptive, breaking away at the natural resistance. Just think of some of the very common things that we tend to want to avoid because it makes us feel bad about ourselves. Things like getting a poor grade in school, or getting a very low rating in our business, or getting negative feedback at work. These are all scenarios that can be difficult to process, and a natural inclination is to put blame on everybody else instead of reflecting to see where are those areas that need significant improvement or just even a little bit of improvement. I've struggled with these types of situations as well. Those times where I got poor grades in school or a poor evaluation where I worked at. My reaction was really to dismiss the feedback. I just wrote it off as, an unfair conclusion. I think if I understood myself a lot more, knowing my pain points, those weak areas, the things that really make those wounds fresh, and if I would have talked about them or processed them in a more effective manner, I think those moments I could have handled them a lot better. So obviously, criticism for me triggered me into being defensive at times, or most of the time. My mom, she'd say certain things that were off-putting about my behaviors or actions, and I get silent and angry, just letting things fester. Generally, this is how criticism is basically dished out. It's saying the negative things of what you're doing wrong, why you need to stop doing it, but what's lacking is a clear solution to what's going on. Is it effective to say, stop getting angry or don't get angry? Instead, it should be a little bit more, how can you get past this anger? How can you manage it? But that's things that are outside of our control, right? Those are things that people say to us. But all we can really do is focus on ourselves. But if I was more proactive, more self-aware of how I conduct myself, then I think I would have realized those areas that were self-defeating or what was holding me back. Beyond just the standard strengths and weaknesses, the likes and dislikes, you can take things a step further to realize not just what you dislike, but why you dislike it and how you would handle those dislikes when they do come about. Knowing your weaknesses and how to manage them and even improve upon them. It's unreasonable to think that you're just going to avoid those areas, and getting angry or shutting down is not going to resolve things. Going through the process of uncovering and discovering things about yourself can be off-putting, but it's going to set you up for so much great experiences later on, where you truly are thriving and not just, getting by. It's being proactive, identifying those areas that you kind of thought about, but have yet to dig deeper. It could be laziness or fear of what you might come to find out, but no matter what, it's going to empower you to really position yourself for things that you want. One of the bigger things when it comes to understanding yourself is finding out your values. These are the qualities which you look for that clearly states what's acceptable to you and not. Unaware of what you value leaves you stuck in the middle, constantly second guessing yourself, saying, I don't know, and less likely to make your own decisions. The tendency will be hoping that things are going to work out by just sitting around, leaving things to chance, less relying upon your own actions. This is a very frightening feeling because it's choosing to forego the power that you do have. And the more this happens, the more overwhelming life becomes. Some values to know are what behaviors are acceptable in a general sense. How do you treat yourself and others? How do they treat you and others around you? By knowing what that is, you can clearly gravitate towards what's acceptable, and everything that's not, you just eliminate or distance yourself from it. So when you know that you're not going to tolerate being yelled at, ridiculed, or demeaned in any way, you can move on from those situations to break free from what seems like power over you. It's understanding that you can just walk away, knowing this provides clear direction on where you should be headed. You might not know exactly where to go, but it's signaling to get as far away as possible from what's unacceptable. This then leads to valuing yourself so much more, being able to trust yourself to figure things out. It's knowing that even though you may not know what exactly to do, you'll take some sort of action to get you ahead, and you're less worried about whether this is right or not. This helps you to break free from fearing being wrong, to just do, and if things turn out less than ideal or poorly, you can always pivot. These setbacks might take a little bit longer to rebound from, but eventually you'll find what works for you with enough self-evaluation and commitment to yourself. And the better that you value yourself, the more you understand what are your dislikes and the reasoning behind them. This just provides what exactly to avoid, and it saves you so much time in the long run because you're no longer willing to just tolerate things that seem like it's okay, but it's really limiting you. From there, you can clearly identify your areas of interest because now you've come to eliminate much of the junk that once taken up your mental and physical space. There's actually a stated optimal number of alternatives to make an effective decision, and that's anywhere between 8 to 15 choices. Anything more than that, it can be very overwhelming, and anything less than that, it just seems very limiting that can feel unsatisfying. So with more time to focus on a few things, it allows you to truly have meaningful experiences. This is just going to make you a lot more thoughtful to really process things a lot more effectively. And by knowing what to eliminate and what to incorporate into your life, it makes you act with more conviction. You clearly know what to do based on what not to do. This seems a little bit vast in all the things of what to avoid, but those top things that you will not tolerate, just are not going to stand for, it's basically moving far away from it. And just through the process of elimination, you're more swifter to move, to just go ahead because of the trust you have within yourself. This really quiets the doubt that brings out your great qualities. Overall, it makes you more to the point, being able to cut through much of the noise, deciphering what is relevant and following through with it. This just then allows you to break free to really be yourself, unafraid to stand out from the crowd, to be okay with doing your own thing while everybody else goes in the same general direction, but they might not be clear why they're going that way. It's a truly satisfying feeling to find what works for you, taking that path that is risky but worth it. And many times that comes from breaking free from the herd to decide on what educational route to take that meets your needs and wants, or what career path or several different career paths to take, or lifestyle choices to make. It can be lonely venturing off on your own, but it feels a little less scary when you have that greater self-belief in yourself that allows conviction to lead the way. When you can come to understand these important points related to you, you're more open to your weaknesses and vulnerabilities. That makes you less defensive, seeing how you can manage them and even improve on them. If I would have understood this early on, I think I would have been able to handle the feedback or criticism from others a lot better. It would feel less personal and allow me to kind of step outside myself to see what their perspective is. And it's also knowing that not everything said to you is constructive, to know what exactly is valuable and what is unhelpful. This really helps to maintain and build your confidence while at the same time preventing the ego from really taking over or trying to dismiss everything that seems like resistance. So the differences you have become embraced. That really helps you accept yourself a lot more and less inclined to be embarrassed or feel bad for not being like everyone else or the average. There's still the misconception of what's different is bad. What's different is not aligned with certain expectations. I really come to think about the friends that I've had since about middle school all the way through high school and up until today. We shared many things in common, but I think why we gravitated towards each other was because of the traits that we displayed. And we were all a bit complementary to each other with different perspectives. And we all accepted each other for just who we were. I was more of the kid one, not wanting to grow up, wearing these raggedy shoes, plain clothes. But my buddies, they were a little bit more well-kept, well-dressed. And what was interesting was that didn't bother them, and it didn't bother me. It never felt like a competition trying to outdo each other, whatever it might be, Or you got to be like us to hang out with us. In each of us four, we had different ethnicities. One of my buddies was Jamaican, another was Dominican, another buddy of mine was Trinidadian, and my parents were from Honduras. So it was a different array of backgrounds, but had many similarities amongst each other. But too often, the difference that a person has makes them stand out from others, that gets magnified and simply becomes the focus going forward, just looking at what makes us different. It could be what makes a person different is that they're really short, really tall, have an extra finger, doesn't look like everybody else, something more uncommon. When really, we should be looking at the things that we do have in common that can help us form a better connection. And then from there, we can see how the differences that we all have is such a benefit because it opens us up to unique ideas, other perspectives, new experiences that really opens up our minds to so many different possibilities. So when you can embrace your differences from your peers, your friends, your family members, you just become so much more comfortable and confident in who you are, and it makes mistakes and failures a lot less heavy, where you can recover from them quicker because of the ability to see them from a more objective perspective. And this applies to our shortcomings or our faults. Instead of seeing them as a drag on who we are, trying to cover them up, we should recognize them so we're better prepared to manage, where it's not so much of a nuisance, but of a, oh, that's uncomfortable, and knowing that's okay. Every now and then I hear the term, nobody's perfect. And this is such a lame kind of excuse because it's common knowledge. Who is trying to be perfect? It's just trying to lessen the blow, or a bit saying that everyone is going to make mistakes. For me, just hearing that really irks me because we all know we're going to make mistakes. So why do we even say that kind of such annoying phrase? Instead, we should be using the terms that are a little bit more seamless, where instead of saying nobody's perfect, how about we're all going to make mistakes, so just learn from it. See what you gain from it, and in essence, it's kind of building that mental fortitude, that resilience needed to be able to bounce back from adversity. I just find that nobody's perfect term a bit too soft, a bit too disempowering, because it's pointing out that everybody's going to make mistakes when it should be about the mistakes that I've made. I'll correct them, or I'll gain something from it. Not simply to write off comparing others' faults as well. It's like saying, look, they made the same mistakes as well. That's not helpful. So by making it a little bit more seamless, just part of the conversation, the language that you use, it makes those mistakes less bothersome. It's just like, yeah, I made them. Okay, I'll move on from it. Instead of trying to dodge the hit to the ego. I think with really strong confidence, it's being able to withstand that hard lesson or hard reflection to effectively evaluate what went on and just simply be better for it. There's so many different avenues to talk about in knowing about yourself. But these are just a few fundamental things that you can address to help get you going. Essentially, what happens is, as you get to know yourself more, is you're just not going to tolerate below the standard that you have for yourself. And it's not so much an end result, but the process of how things are being done. And you'll be much happier with yourself knowing when to walk away from poor situations, situations that limit you and what you can do. To have confidence and belief to pursue things that you truly desire. Hopefully it's not just outcome based, but steps in getting there. Naturally, this is just going to help you have a better relationship with yourself and then with everybody else. So your communication improves, your proactiveness improves, and it just sets you up for better and better experiences, better and better situations. You'll just be able to take in and process what you go through a whole lot more effectively because of the higher amounts of composure, self-awareness, and looking for the advantages of what you've been through. This means that what might be perceived as negative situations, you'll be able to look at them more objectively to gain something from it. And this helps to take things as a whole a lot less personal, so you can move past it instead of being held back by potentially what could be anger and resentment of what already happened that you really can't change. But what you can change is what you're doing right now and in the future. You can change your behaviors, your actions, how you conduct yourself for the better. There are going to be those times where we as individuals fall short, and it's on us to take accountability. And other times, people will make things bigger than what they really are. So just aim to take something beneficial out of both sides. Really, this process of uncovering many different things about yourself to see what you have makes you aware to identify vulnerabilities and how to manage it and possibly leverage it. In some situations, what one might see as a defect or as a weakness could be a big strength in another situation. Take for example, someone that comes off as aloof, that engages very little and seems to lack direction and might come off as lazy or has no ambition. Someone else might see that as a strength, to be able to ponder things more, that sparks creativity, that leads to amazing ideas that lays a foundation for many wonderful things. A person like this might underperform in a heavy structure setting like a factory or a traditional school setting or a traditional work setting. But they might excel at creativity, creating stories, artwork, making music, something uplifting because they can really think things through. As you're uncovering more and more, you'll find those things that you do excel in where you didn't even know that it was a strength because it was out of your realm. It just never crossed your mind. These are those surprising moments that make finding other facets about yourself more enticing, where once it might feel like, I don't want to know what's under there, to what else can I dig up, simply driven by curiosity. Getting to this point is a really fulfilling experience because it's moving away from needing to mask and defend those insecurities to really recognize what they are, because it provides information that you can apply in different scenarios. It makes what seems like faults less sharp and more of a reminder to provide some humility. With enough uncovering, you'll transition to discovering, leaving behind trying to ignore or hide what seems embarrassing or inadequate. This really transforms you from being passive, waiting, hoping for things to happen, to looking to take on adventures where you make it happen. It's the process of getting more and more comfortable with yourself that when you do take on something ambitious, and if you fall short, it's not fatal, because the awareness of those insecurities and vulnerabilities no longer feed that self-doubt, because confidence, belief, and your strength can counter that. Make it a priority to just know yourself more. Spending the right time alone, spending time with your family and your friends, as it provides a good balance to self-reflect. The more you know about yourself, the clearer things are going to be. That's going to improve every aspect of your life, from making decisions, having great habits, responding to adversity well, forming stronger relationships, and creating better experiences. And at the heart of it, it's simply being curious about yourself, asking more and more questions, why you do this, why you behave this way. And a great, fun exercise is to find out what type of personality you have. And this just gives you a general sense of, what you might be more inclined to. So there's many different personality tests. Just, search them and see what fits you well. And this just gives you an idea of how you might be able to leverage your uniqueness for the better. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're interested in more topics like this, become a Thriving Minds member at www.thrivingminds.live. It's your personal development resource so you can build that right mindset so you can live to thrive. All right, until next time.